Okay, want to just review what we did on Saturday, the Women's Hormone Seminar. So, want to just say thank you for the time for going over this with us. We are definitely going to cover a lot in the next few minutes. Hopefully, it'll be a pretty quick one here. So, all right, let's get to it. A little bit of who I am. I am a mama, a wife of to my high school sweetheart. I got three kids. My goal has always been to help women, empower women. And today it's all about giving you the tools to just basically have a blueprint. What do you need to do when it comes to your health and hormones? So, been doing this for a little while, and I always tell people just remember our healthcare system sucks, especially for women, and we have a choice. And one of the things I see a lot that 1 in 5 women will have chronic health conditions. We're more likely to be prescribed depressants for menopause symptoms rather than hormone therapy. And some things people don't even know, especially women. We only have 3% of your eggs by the time you're 40. So there's a lot of changes going on when you hit 40, even in your 30s. And we're more prone to low thyroid function as we age because of estrogen, progesterone. They both decline. They both are also anti-inflammatory, but they also play a dance with thyroid. And why it sucks for women over 40 is because most of the research is based on male outcomes, not female, and everyone's unique. And also, even rats, they test on male rats. So, what exactly are hormones? Well, they're chemical messengers that are made by glands and they travel through the bloodstream and they go to specific areas in the body. That's where they're going to regulate, sex drive, fertility, mood, metabolism, hair growth. And there are over 50 hormones and they all have a personality. As you can see this here. I always get a laugh and chuckle from this because I always say this isn't us, but we do know someone that's itchy, bitchy, sweaty, sleepy, bloated, forgetful, or cycle. I always say welcome to perimenopause or hormonal chaos. So, why are hormones important? Because they are the language of communication. They will upregulate and downregulate systems in the body. So, they are responsible for our weight, our mood, sleep, energy, pain, cravings, and how we age, and so much more. So, we want hormone harmony. And I always talk about the players. So remember this pet, tick, monomic, or see it as a mnemonic. Progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, those are the main players, and the supporting actors are going to be thyroid, insulin, cortisol, and you get to meet them today. So the three stars of today's show of the show were progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. I give them a little nickname so that way you kind of remember them. Progesterone, she's like the bestie, the best friend. Estrogen is the queen. She rules. She rules our life. And testosterone is really helpful also. She's kind of our sassy, bold, witty friend that kind of comes up and spices up our life a little bit. So, what do they do? Well, I like to call estrogen she's the dominant hormone, female hormone, and she's the queen. She's like our testosterone. She helps us give us our curves, our softness, our smooth skin. She contributes to our bone health and muscle health, brain health, mood stability, a healthy sex drive, lubrication in the eyes, joints, vagina, and also helps us, it balances our periods with progesterone. And I always say estrogen, she's in everybody's business. So she does impact all our systems. The other one is progesterone. I call her the pal. She's kind of the best friend. She's made in the ovaries and she's pretty calming. She has anti-inflammatory properties. So she kind of has that dance with estrogen. So she hangs out with her quite a bit. Then you got testosterone, who testosterone is kind of that sassy and bold hormone that's responsible for sexual function, libido, muscle development, bone health, also how we learn, how we remember, plan, even our mood, humor, and motivation. So she's super important. Then we have the other three supporting actors, as I call them: tick, thyroid, insulin, cortisol. Thyroid is the fat burning hormone. I also call it the CEO of the cells. Insulin is the sugar hormone, and cortisol is the stress hormone. So the three supporting actors, thyroid is also known as a fat burning gland. Basically, she's the CEO of every single cell because she sets the metabolic rate of every cell, has a parking space for her. So she's just as important as the queen. Also impacts weight loss, body temperature, hair growth, digestion, sex drive, brain health, even fertility. And then you have insulin, also known as the sugar hormone. She's kind of the cousin of cortisol, and she's one of the belly fat bullies. And this one's really, really important because this impacts how our weight, our aging. It also controls our how our body uses and stores blood sugars, glucose. Then we got belly fat hormone number one, which is cortisol. Also call her the stress hormone because she does buffer stress. It's a built-in alarm system, supposed to just boost energy to handle stress, but also to restore it back to balance. And the cortisol is made by the adrenal glands. And I call her belly fat bully number one because we will hold on to fat if cortisol keeps showing up and hangs out too long. She also regulates blood pressure, whether it's high or low. It also increases blood sugar levels. So a lot of the time you think you're eating perfectly, but yet your cortisol levels are going up. So then all your blood sugar numbers go up as well. So cortisol also helps keep inflammation down, but she's only supposed to show up periodically. We talked a little bit about the hormonal cycle. I like to break it up into three parts, like the follicular phase, ovulatory phase here in the middle, and then the luteal phase. So basically, you can see that day 1 through 28 is a menstrual cycle, or a cycle. Days 1 through 7 will be kind of menstruation. Then you get more of a follicular phase. Estrogen is typically starts to go up. It's higher than progesterone. So we called the first half, the first 14 days, estrogen dominant phase. Second half is progesterone dominant phase. Remember, we talked about two hormones, the queen and her partner, her bestie. So they kind of balance each other out during this 28-day cycle. Okay. Doesn't mean that you don't have any estrogen in the second half of the cycle. She's lower and progesterone is just higher. And then you have this luteal phase right here, or excuse me, your ovulatory phase. And I say that's when all three of them surge: testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. So kind of a little overview of that. So what happens during the follicular phase? It's usually that first day of the cycle, or it is the first day of the cycle, typically through days 10 through 12, estrogen, progesterone drop a little bit, but then it picks up and starts to pick up over the next 7 days. Sometimes, I tell women, just be aware of your blood flow, the texture, your discharge. What does it look like? During this time, you may get some cravings, cramps, low back pain, and fatigue. And that's just because of the drop of some of those hormones. Cervical secretion is usually yellowish and sticky towards day 7 to 12. When you're ovulating, this is one of the best phases I tell for women. It's usually days 12, 13, and 14. There's high fertility. There's an increase of estrogen and testosterone. So the discharge looks a little bit more slippery or stretchy, clear and wet on your peak day of fertility. So that's important to know if you want to get pregnant or if you don't. Sometimes women do experience some pelvic pain because the egg is releasing. Then you go into what's called the luteal phase. And the luteal phase is the second half, 14 to 28. Typically, progesterone and estrogen, they do increase and then they start to decrease towards the last few days. That's kind of where women get a little bit more moody, experience PMS if they don't have enough of progesterone around. And if you didn't ovulate and release an egg, you'll get bloating, fatigue, and low energy and horrific mood swings. So breaking this down a little bit more, the follicular phase is a good time. We have a whole worksheet on this. Days 1 through 7 is a good time to reevaluate your life, do your goal setting for the next 30 days or even for the year, and to see what's important in your life and what needs action. Your left and right side of the brain are communicating really well. So logic and creativity, you're great on your gut instincts. And then by the time you hit day 7 through 12, there's a lot of creativity, a lot of new brain connections, a good time to start a project, whether it's at work, at home, or school, masterminding, brainstorming. You got more energy you're a lot more social and you feel like you can conquer the world. It's a good time for new friendships and socializing. Then when you get into days 12, 13, and 14, also known as the ovulatory phase, I always say this is the best time of the month because your communication skills are like on fire. It's like you're just firing off on all cylinders. And other people are willing to, they're very willing and receptive to listen to you because of your communication skills. You are just on point. And the reason being is because you also are releasing something called hormones, like hormones, pheromone. So there are hormones that are giving off, like you're ovulating, they're giving off a smell. You are not aware of the smell, but the opposite sex and other people will smell it. And it's just like you become very attractive and irresistible to them. And it's usually the opposite sex, but other women can feel like your power. So this is a good time to ask for a raise. I say get a new car or the bling. Great communication skills. So it makes you a very a magnetic human being. It's a good time for a first date, or if you're trying to attract that right mate. Important conversations to have with your spouse, your mom, or your boss during this time, because you're not going to get really emotional, but you're going to be able to think things through and be firing off on all cylinders. Now, a luteal phase is days 14 to 28. This is a good time to focus on you. There is a heightened awareness. This is a time to just be home, read books. You know, if you get invited to go to parties, you might want to bow out and just say, I'll catch you next time because you're probably not going to be at your best. This is a time for nesting and preparing for the next phase. So you'll be organizing your car, your garage, your closets, kitchen, that junk drawer. It's a good time to kind of just organize and be in preparation. You have less social activities because I always say that you should have less social activities because your energy is going to be a little bit lower. This is a lot of self-care time, massages, and detox baths. And then you got perimenopause. Okay. This is the phase that women are, I'm seeing it in women in their mid 30s, even now. Earlier, it's typically would hit about 40s. It could be a 7 to 10 year process, and it can start as early, like I said, late 30s, usually starts about 40s. There's a lot of hormonal fluctuations of estrogen and progesterone. So, what do you expect to see during this early perimenopause phase? Cycles are shorter, your sleep is a little bit off, you notice a little bit of weight gain and softness, your skin and hair changes, you could have regular periods and you're still ovulating, and so you can still get pregnant. So please use birth control if you don't want kids. And sometimes all the big hormones, FSH, LH, estrogen, progesterone, those still will be normal. So that's why a lot of doctors, you do not diagnose, or a doctor or practitioner can't tell you you're in perimenopause because all your hormones could still look normal. So you really have to go based on symptoms. And sometimes your estradiol, it doesn't even decline. Your FSH can still be below 10. So then you hit perimenopause, or middle of perimenopause. You start to skip periods. Your periods are starting to go a little bit longer. You're noticing, okay, a little bit more off. This is probably the harshest phase here. You can have 2 periods in a month. You can skip a period. I always call it the wild change cycle. In the cycle, it's a wild west of perimenopause. There'll be a drop in progesterone. You may not ovulate. You still could get pregnant, but you may ovulate. So that estrogen, the queen, will go up and down. So you have no idea what's going on. Sometimes you'll get those hot flashes, breast pain, heavy periods. Feels like you're on a roller coaster ride. One day you want to murder someone, the other day you're all lovey-dovey. So, your FSH during this time can move into double digits, and then it can go back to 8. So it's very erratic. And like I said, this whole perimenopause, remember, it can be a whole 7 to 10 day cycle for that, or 7 to 10 day period for that, 7 to 10 year period. Okay. So then you get into late perimenopause, you're skipping cycles. You can usually go 3 to 4 months without a cycle, and you get a cycle. You sometimes think, oh my gosh, am I pregnant? You start stressing out. Oh my gosh, am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? And then your cortisol levels go up, and then it gets a little bit crazy during this time. So the symptoms will continue if there's no treatment. That's why you start getting like low estrogen, night sweats, brain fog, your skin is dry vagina, joint muscle pain, your itchy ears, dry mouth. I mean, there's over 100 symptoms of menopause and perimenopause. So it's crazy what can happen. Heart palpitations, you get lactate, itchy ears, itchy anus. I mean, just crazy stuff. So in late perimenopause, you will start to see that your labs are actually you're like, especially like your cholesterol, glucose, and insulin, they all increase. And you're like, I haven't changed anything. Why are my lab markers increasing? So you can even skip 3 consecutive cycles and you can be in menopause within 2 to 4 years. So that's kind of like, when this gets this crazy, you can, you're going to be in full menopause within 2 to 4 years. So I believe this is a really good time. It's very personalized when you should start hormones. Some women start in the first early perimenopause and then in some in middle, but that's very personalized and individualized. So menopause is one day. You have 12 months, no cycle. The average age is about 51. Postmenopause basically is any days after menopause. You're going to have low estrogen, low progesterone. FSH is typically above 20. So what happens when we start losing our hormones and we don't have that nice little dance? Well, the queen is leaving. She's not around. Remember, she's our dominant female hormone. She's our testosterone who gives us our curves, our nice skin, brain health, mood stability, sex drive, lubrication, and she balances the periods with progesterone. Well, why do we need her? Why is she so important? Because every cell needs her. She's overlooking everything. She impacts everything from our blood sugar, brain, heart, muscle mass, weight, bone, our mood, even our sex drive. So, as I mentioned, there are over 100 symptoms of estrogen decline, and that's basically what perimenopause is when your estrogen levels are dropping and progesterone and even testosterone. Anything from UTIs, the biggest one I hear is brain fog, but that also could be a thyroid issue, vertigo, fatigue, frozen shoulder, arthritis, osteoarthritis, mood swings, and hot flashes. I think brain fog and mood swings are like the biggest one. Hot flashes was, we think that like, oh, I went through menopause. Like I'll talk to ladies and they're like, well, I didn't have any problems through menopause, because because they didn't have the hot flashes, but they maybe had the mood swings and the brain fogs and they weren't even aware of that. So they don't even know that they were really that bad. And if you ask their family member or partner, they're like, oh, no, 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 I noticed a change. We become more insulin resistant. We lose our muscle mass. There's an increase of risk for cardiac disease because cholesterol is increasing. Or we also are becoming more inflamed. So it's like we have a constant fire in our body going on. So you get a lot of those itises, pain, and you also have shoulder pain, knee pain, back pain, pelvic pain. You start to have a lot of GI issues, autoimmune conditions, and diabetes mellitus. So we start to struggle with our sleep when we lose our queen. We become very forgetful. Remember, the queen just had her stuff together. She just like knew, she was on top of things. But when we have less of her, a lot of this happens, and we start to get that higher risk of dementia, hip fracture, and even more cardiovascular issues than men when we go through that change of life. So what also happens? Well, you're getting the hot flashes, night sweats, infrequent or disrupted periods, decreased sex drive, eye, skin, and vagina, less moisture there. Our hair is not as shiny and bouncy as it used to be. And we end up injuring back, knee, wrist, shoulder. That's why during perimenopause, this is not a good time. I'm not a big fan of the group classes where you're just pounding your body, like all the CrossFit, Orange Theory type of classes. This is not your friend. You doing this is it's totally working against you. So you start to get that sagging breasts and they're less full. Now, the queen impacts everyone. So when she decreases, so when estrogen decreases, you're going to have less dopamine, acetylcholine. Dopamine is just like, yeah, let's go. You're just driven in life. You just don't have that passion anymore. Acetylcholine, you're not remembering things because the queen, estrogen impacts that. Estrogen impacts BDNF, that brain fertilizer, the ability for you to create new neural pathways and for your brain to be firing off on all cylinders. Serotonin, which makes you happy. That's why I see a lot of women that are depressed. And what do they want to give you? An antidepressant. Oxytocin, that love hormone. You just feel like, yeah, I don't really care if I hug anybody or my hubby hugs me. It just doesn't do anything for you anymore because you don't have it because the queen's not around. And then GABA, we start to lose GABA and she's more calming. So we start to speak our mind. So that's why a perimenopausal woman feels like crap. That's what I see a lot in the practice. The other dominant female, we call her progesterone. She is the bestie. She's made in the ovary. She's pretty calming, has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, is also neuroprotective. So when we lose her, we become less tolerant, more depressed, more bloated. Our thyroid is impacted because we also need our thyroid needs progesterone. We have difficulty sleeping and we just lose our zest in life. So because she's impacting GABA and the GABA helps us feel good. So we're just like not excited about life. Typically, this is the first hormone we begin to lose. And this is the first hormone. I always find that progesterone is impacted even in young women. So you start to have anovulatory cycles. And if you don't ovulate, you can't make progesterone. Therefore, you can't make GABA. You have the mood swings. And you also can get weight gain because the thyroid needs her too. So that's what happens when progesterone declines. And testosterone. Testosterone was the other one. Remember, it gives us our sex drive, libido, muscle development, bone health. We are able to learn, remember, and plan. We have a little bit more of a good mood and humor and motivation. So when we start losing testosterone, our sex drive decreases. Just lack of energy, fatigue. We're not as strong anymore. Our alteration of cognitive function. It's like our brain's not firing off on all cylinders. I said one of the most obvious signs of a low testosterone in women who work out. It's like you just don't even care if you work out anymore. When working out was like everything for you. And sometimes you can have too much testosterone, and that's more like women, and they kind of hit in the 20s and 30s because you have other androgens like DHEA, DHT. You get that thinning hair, irregular periods, a deepening of the voice, PCOS, and elevated insulin. So then we also have the thyroid. Then thyroid throws in some complexity to all this because it is also associated with fertility, perimenopause, and menopause. The thyroid is the CEO, remember, and has a parking space in every cell. There's over 70 trillion cells. And so, women, there's over 5 to 8 more, they're 5 to 8 more times likely to have thyroid issues than men. There's 20 million Americans that have one. 60% don't even know that they have a thyroid issue. And 1 in 8 women will develop a thyroid problem in their lifetime. 80% of low thyroid are in women. And so that low thyroid is going to contribute to weight gain, brain fog so much. And 90% of those that actually have a low thyroid are producing antibodies. And the antibodies, basically, that means that chunks are being taken out of your thyroid when you are stressed and eating foods that like everything that's like gluten, dairy, sugar, processed food, seed oils, you're just destroying your thyroid. More than about 10% of women will have subclinical thyroidism. So, it's something that we really need to keep an eye on. This is often missed with a lot of doctors because, there's a lot of similarities with low thyroid and perimenopause. So I call it the fat burning gland, the CEO, because it impacts everything for your basal metabolic rate, your body temperature, how fast or slow you lose weight. Hair growth is a huge one for thyroid, sleep, energy, and how quick you recover from workout and sickness. And when we are stressed, your body, your adrenal makes cortisol. Well, that will interfere with your body's ability to make thyroid hormone and actually convert the T4 to the T3, which is your active. It actually will increase what's called reverse T3, which is putting a brakes on your thyroid. So it will also damage those thyroid receptor sites. So stress is a huge impact on your thyroid, but because when you're stressed, your body makes cortisol, and it even promotes intestinal permeability. So inflammation will also impact the thyroid. So therefore, that serotonin, dopamine, that happy neurotransmitter, the more molecule, you feel less of that. So what happens when we have a breakdown? Well, you can get anxiety, depression, brain fog, sleeplessness, inability to lose weight. So Low thyroid sounds a lot like perimenopause and menopause too. So this is the time when you are in perimenopause, but your thyroid is also the one that's actually being impacted. That's why it's important to know your labs. And even though your estrogen, progesterone are fluctuating during this time, thyroid plays a huge role. So then we got cortisol. It's the stress hormone, buffer stress. It also will boost energy to handle stress, but then it brings your body back to recovery, so you do need cortisol for that. It does impact your wake sleep cycle, blood pressure, increases blood sugar to move the glucose into the cell for energy. And it does help keep the inflammation down. So, but it's only supposed to show up temporarily. I call this belly fat bully number one because you will get, if she's showing up too much, because there's a lot of receptor sites in the abdominal region. And if there's constantly showing up, then you're going to have that belly fat. Cortisol is great if it just shows up in little peaks and then leaves, not to be there the whole time. That'll interfere with your sleep, your digestion, memory, concentration. You start getting headaches, anxiety, depression. There's a decrease in sex drive, infertility, because it's impacting all the other hormones in their job. So you can't remember things, you can't focus. There goes that brain fog. You have a lot of cardio related conditions, heart attack, stroke, hypertension, and you have more injuries to tight muscles because the body is not recovering. Then we have belly fat bully number two that we talked about, insulin. It's called the sugar hormone. It's the cousin of cortisol. It is one of the most important ones because it does impact our weight and how we age. Your pancreas makes insulin. It controls how your body is using and storing blood sugar, basically glucose, and it's moving that glucose to energy from the bloodstream into the cells. So it's kind of like that key that allows glucose to enter the cells throughout the body. So we become more insulin resistant with belly fat bully number two, the sugar hormone, I call it insulin. And we start to have that excess fat around the waist, pear shape, apple shape body type. Our ratio is greater 0.8. We have sugar cravings. We really get hangry because we have very little metabolic flexibility. A lot of premature aging, inflammation increases. Now you're susceptible more to stroke, cancer, heart disease. You have more sugar cravings. Triglycerides go up. Blood pressure goes up, fatigue, low HDL, and you have more clotting issues. And this is because of insulin. So you have to manage insulin. And remember, insulin and cortisol, they're like cousins. When one goes up, the other one's going to show up too. So what do we do for this? So we discussed that we have a whole lady cycle, and there's a whole handout how you're supposed to eat during the time if you're a menstruating female. So you'll get the links for that. Just take a peek at that. And what about women that some of the challenges we see? Fertility is a second half is important. So if you're trying to get pregnant, sleep stress, higher carbs are going to be important. If you're getting PMS, make sure that you're having enough carbs in the second half of the cycle. You're doing less extreme exercise, you're resting, stop the people pleasing. If you have PMMD, you've got to support the liver with a lot of greens in the mid cycle. And if you're having irregular periods, don't be fasting, eat 3 meals, rest is important. And the last week of your cycle, spend more time doing outdoor exercises. So if you want to create harmony for all this, what do? You want to focus on protein, 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 protein. I always say minimum 100 grams of daily, 1 gram per ideal body weight. Focus on single ingredient foods, vegetables, bitters, healthy fats, no seed oils. And what I mean by seed oils is the hateful eight, which is like sunflower, soy, safflower. It's oh gosh, it was the other ones we talked about, canola, carrot, and even we got into this canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil. You don't want any of those vegetable oils. You want to make sure that you're moving. Strength training is super important. I'm a big fan of resistance training. More of that than cardio and mobility are all important. Make sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep, and you have a sleep routine every single night. Remember, your bedroom is for SNS, sleep and sex only. Stress management, that's where yoga, journaling, grounding, spending some time outside, sauna, flotation tanks are really good to manage stress. Mindset is another one. I'm such a believer that, you got to master your mind or it's going to master you. So personal development, I love the gratitude journal, using the Parrot app. The Parrot app's free. I mean, all this stuff I'm talking about is free. Meditation, visualization, and connecting with like-minded women, going to workshop, conferences, and retreats. And if a woman is in perimenopause, it's a lot of the same thing, the managing the stress, supporting the adrenals with maca and adaptogens like Rishi's another one, rhodiola. And you may want to start considering progesterone that second half of the cycle if you're really getting a lot of those extreme mood swings. Vitix is great for the hormonal cycle. You want to make sure that you're getting some probiotics, fermented foods. Decrease your workout times to about 45 minutes or less, decrease cardio to about 20 minutes, do 3 to 4 days max. And you want to do you want to do more like little sprints, but you want to keep it short. Focus on building muscle, especially the legs and the booty, because it's kind of like acts like a mop to sweep up that glucose. Don't skip meals. Make sure that you eat within 2 hours of awakening. Protein, protein, protein. Then you can have your coffee. ACV, apple cider vinegar, and lemon juice for blood sugar. You take a couple teaspoons, 1 to 2 teaspoons, put in some water and drink that. So if you have really, really extreme signs and symptoms, you may want to consider low dose estrogen during time. And I always say be careful with DIM because DIM should only be used if you're trying to decrease estrogen. So other menopause solutions, make sure you manage stress, keep cortisol under control. Sleep is going to be important. Consider HRT, focus on building muscle, jump training to build muscles and bones, um, and strength training. Agility is vital. So I like to do like Pilates and yoga. Tai Chi is another thing. You want to make sure you're supporting your gut with fermented foods, probiotics, less workout times, 45 minutes or less, cardio, 20 to 30 minutes, usually 20 minutes, 3 or 4 times a day, high intensity, or 3 or 4 days a week, and high intensity. Make sure you don't skip your meals, 100, minimum 100 grams. Once again, like previously, 1 to 2 hours of waking, you want to have some protein before, and always have protein before your coffee. Peptide therapy can also be really good for you at this time. BPC 157 for pain, thymosin beta 4. These are for pain and inflammation and healing, also known as the Wolverine stack. I personally love to have a GLP-1 to modulate the inflammatory response. Hormones are safe. The only women that would not be a good candidate would be someone with blood clots or active cancer. But you've got to do all this stuff first before you consider hormones. I talked about all the labs. We'll provide you a list for that. If you're getting lab work done, you're like, well, I have all my labs and my doctor said that I'm good, that there's nothing wrong with me. My labs are normal. Number one, this is what I have seen over doing this for I don't know how many years, close to 20 years, that number one, I usually never see sufficient labs for when we see patients. Number two, they're comparing you to everybody else. So we want you to be in a healthy optimal range. We don't want you to be close to the almost sick range. And they're like, come back in a year, we'll rerun your labs until you get sick, and then we do something. I equate it to it's kind of like driving your car. Your tires are bald. You have to change them, but you haven't. And you're like, I'll just wait. I'm going to keep driving a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit more miles. And you keep doing that. And then it blows out. And then there's chaos. So you don't want that. So once again, menopause, hypothyroid, perimenopause, they overlap with symptoms, digestion and fatigue, depression, memory issues, um, cholesterol levels go up, sleep issues, skin issues, thinning hair, weight gain, muscle weakness. So all of these, I mean, they start to look alike after a while, and it's often missed with the doctor. And that's why you can't get the help that you need in a 7 to 10 minute visit, because there's no way you can tell them everything. Look how long this little video I'm making is taking right now. Stress and inflammation are the big culprits. Make sure that extensive thyroid labs are done. Our goal is to be a healthier version of ourselves so you can feel good, feel your brain, have energy, and lose weight. So, a lot of the thyroid conditions will add complexity to the treatment and symptoms associated with infertility, perimenopause, and menopause. So, what do you do if you want to get your estrogen back? Well, there's different options here. Hormone optimizations, everything from topical oral creams, injections, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. There was an NIH study that was for women. Um, and and it was such a poor study because it was for women that were already over 60. They weren't even using bioidentical, they were only using oral um, progestin. They were past that 10-year period. They were smokers, they were overweight. So it was a poor study, and it wasn't even with real hormones, real bioidentical hormones. Hormones are pretty safe for everyone. Except like I said, even, this is everything's very personalized. So it just depends on your provider. Vaginal hormone, and it's just like pretty much every single woman can use vaginal hormones, estradiol down in the vagina to prevent, keep everything I say juicy down there, but also to prevent UTIs, which can create a lot of problems from fatigue to brain fog to loopiness. So it really takes a lot of digging. So I always say you got to fix the house first, then you decorate it with the hormones. You got to do all the foundation stuff we talked about, or with, strength training, sleep, food, and stress. So that was pretty much all that we covered. We did do open Q&A. So there you go. That was a summary of what we did on at our workshop.